The celestial arena floated above the capital like a crown forged from glass and captive lightning. Beneath its transparent floor, the storm bands of Vaelora turned slowly around the planet, pale ribbons of electricity crawling through violet clouds while 300,000 spectators filled the rising tiers with noise. Holographic banners stretched across the air, displaying the imperial crest beside a much smaller image of Earth, a blue world, reduced to a decorative symbol beneath the words, "Humanity's Final Lesson." Ethan Ward stood alone behind the entrance gate and read the slogan twice. "A little dramatic," he said. The guard beside him, a four-armed veteran wearing ceremonial armor, stared forward. "You are about to face 13 undefeated champions." Ethan nodded. "Then I suppose the banner department earned its salary." The guard's upper left hand tightened around his pulse spear, though Ethan could not tell whether the alien was offended or trying not to laugh. Beyond the gate, the announcer's amplified voice rolled through the arena, introducing each champion with titles long enough to require breathing breaks. There was Varkesh the Bone Splitter, survivor of the Crimson Moon campaign; Odrin of the Nine Blades, whose armored skin had supposedly stopped artillery fire; the twin sisters Sarai and Merai, famous for killing a war beast before breakfast and complaining afterward that breakfast had been cold. Every name received thunderous applause. Ethan received silence, followed by scattered laughter. He did not blame them. Compared with the towering champions shown above the arena in blazing holograms, he looked ordinary. His combat uniform was faded, his boots were scratched, and the black insignia on his shoulder had been worn nearly smooth. He was not unusually tall. He did not possess reinforced claws, venom spines, or a cybernetic jaw capable of crushing starship plating. He looked like a tired man who had been interrupted on his way to repair something. From the royal balcony, Princess Lysera leaned forward with open curiosity. She was almost entirely human in appearance, except for the long, elegant ears rising through her silver blonde hair. Small chains of crystal hung from their tips, glowing softly whenever the arena lights shifted. Her violet eyes moved from Ethan to the 13 champions gathering on the opposite side. "That is the human soldier?" she asked. Lord Terevin, seated beside her, gave a dismissive wave. "A border infantryman. Quiet record. No important victories." "He looks calm. Many prey animals become still before death." Lysera smiled. "How poetic. I practiced it. That explains why it sounded rehearsed." Terevin's proud expression collapsed while the nobles around them hid their amusement behind jeweled cups. Below, Ethan rolled his shoulders and studied the arena. The floor was divided into magnetic combat zones. Defensive drones hovered near the ceiling, programmed to prevent weapons from reaching the audience. Along the walls, gravitic projectors could alter weight, direction, or momentum depending on the chosen spectacle. It was not merely a place for fighting. It was a machine designed to turn violence into theater. His gaze paused on a maintenance hatch near the eastern wall, then on the timing lights above the royal balcony. 60 seconds had been promised. That was the part the Empire considered funny. The gate opened with a deep metallic groan. Heat, noise, and white light struck him at once. Ethan walked forward carrying only a simple combat knife, its dull gray blade almost insulting beside the champion's plasma axes and molecular swords. The laughter grew louder. One of the champions, a massive reptilian warrior named Korvath, pointed at the knife. "Did they forget to arm you, human?" Ethan looked down at it. "No, they forgot to disarm you." A few spectators laughed before realizing they were not supposed to. Korvath's throat expanded with anger. On the royal balcony, Lysera's smile faded into something more attentive. Ethan continued toward the center mark, each step measured, neither slow nor hurried. High above him, hidden behind layers of imperial security glass, an elderly military historian named Caldris suddenly rose from his seat. His skin had gone gray. He stared at the nearly erased insignia on Ethan's shoulder, then activated the magnification lens in his artificial eye. 3 narrow lines crossing a broken circle. A symbol absent from every modern military archive. but not from the forbidden records sealed beneath the palace. Caldris whispered a word no one near him understood. Then he sent an emergency message to the Imperial War Council. Do not begin the match. The signal failed to leave his console. Communications had already been restricted for the broadcast. In the arena, the 13 champions formed a wide semicircle around Ethan. The announcer raised both arms, drawing the audience into breathless silence. Princess Lysera watched the human's face, expecting fear at last. Instead, Ethan glanced at the enormous countdown display and sighed. 1 minute, he murmured. They never give enough time for introductions. The combat signal began to glow. The signal did not sound. A thin red ring appeared around the arena floor instead, indicating a technical delay. The audience groaned as one organism, the disappointment of 300,000 people shaking the transparent walls. Corvath lowered his plasma axe and glared toward the official's booth as though considering whether to defeat bureaucracy before defeating Ethan. Excellent, Ethan said. Now we have time for introductions. None of the champions answered. A maintenance drone descended from the ceiling, its round body flashing apologetic symbols while 6 mechanical arms examined the nearest gravitic projector. The announcer attempted to preserve the drama by explaining that even the greatest imperial technology occasionally required recalibration. The drone immediately struck the projector with a metal tool. Ethan looked at Corvath. Advanced recalibration. The reptilian champion's jaw tightened. On the royal balcony, Princess Lysera covered a laugh with one hand. Lord Taravan noticed and frowned. You find him amusing? I find the drone amusing. The drone did not speak. Then it has better timing than you. Below them, the champions were ordered to return temporarily to their waiting platforms. Ethan was escorted back through the western gate, where attendants prepared a narrow chamber containing medical scanners, weapon racks, and a nutrition dispenser designed for 12 major species. The machine studied him for several seconds before producing a bowl of green paste. Ethan examined it. What is this? The 4-armed guard stood near the door. Human food. It is green. The machine assures us that humans consume plants, usually after we stop them from moving. The guard stared at him, uncertain whether humans actually hunted vegetables. Ethan tasted the paste and immediately regretted it. Your machine has declared war on Earth. For the first time, the guard's lower mouth twitched. Ethan sat on the bench and watched the medical scanner sweep blue light over his body. Across the chamber, a transparent wall offered a view of the champions' preparation hall. They were stretching, roaring, testing weapons, and discussing who would attack first. Several had begun arguing over the order of victory. The twins, Sarai and Marai, appeared to be placing bets. Ethan finished the paste anyway. You are not afraid, the guard said. Ethan looked up. The alien's armor identified him as Captain Dresk, a veteran of several border campaigns. His dark eyes remained fixed on the floor rather than Ethan's face. Would it help? Ethan asked. No. Then I am saving energy. Dresk finally met his gaze. They believe you are weak. They may be right. I have seen weak soldiers. They speak loudly before battle. You have barely spoken at all. I complained about the food. That is different. Not to the cook. Dresk moved closer, lowering his voice. Your shoulder insignia. What unit does it represent? Ethan's expression did not change, but his hand rested briefly over the faded symbol. An old one. How old? Old enough that no one should care. Before Dresk could continue, the chamber door opened. Princess Lysera entered with 2 royal guards and Lord Taravan following behind her. The long tips of her ears shifted slightly as she studied Ethan, their crystal chains chiming with each step. Dresk immediately bowed. Ethan remained seated. Taravan's face hardened. Stand before the princess. Ethan looked at Lysera. Does she require it? Lysera paused, surprised by the question. No. Then my knees thank you. One of the royal guards coughed to hide a laugh. Teravan turned toward him so sharply that the guard suddenly found the ceiling fascinating. Lysera approached the bench. I wanted to see the human who was about to fight 13 champions. You saw me from the balcony. At that distance, you looked smaller. I receive that often. Her eyes moved toward the worn knife on the table. That is your only weapon? It has been reliable. Korvath's axe can cut through armored vehicles. I am not an armored vehicle. That is your strategy? It is one part of it. Teravan stepped forward. You speak as though this is a joke. Ethan's calm eyes settled on him. No. Jokes are usually safer. The room became still. Lysera studied him more carefully. Beneath the humor there was something disciplined in the way he sat, as though every position had been chosen for a reason. His back remained near the wall. His view covered both doors. Even while speaking, his attention shifted toward reflections in the medical glass, tracking everyone behind him without turning his head. She had seen decorated commanders with less awareness. What happens when the signal sounds? She asked. Ethan glanced through the transparent wall at the 13 champions. They attack. And then? I disappoint them. A soft tone interrupted the conversation. The arena systems had been restored. At the same moment, deep beneath the palace, Caldris entered the sealed military archive using an emergency authorization he had not activated in 40 years. Ancient doors opened before him, releasing cold air and clouds of preserved dust. Holographic records flickered awake along the corridor. He searched the forbidden database for the broken circle insignia. The system resisted. He entered the symbol manually. A single file appeared, marked with a warning written in 12 extinct languages. Terran Adaptive Warfare Program. Caldris opened it. Most of the records had been erased, but one surviving image showed a formation of human soldiers wearing the same insignia as Ethan. Beneath it was a casualty report from a forgotten war. 32 humans deployed. 9 enemy armies surrendered. Caldris gripped the console. Back in the chamber, Ethan rose and picked up his knife. Princess Lysera stepped aside as he approached the gate. You still believe they will underestimate you? She asked. Ethan looked through the opening doors, where 13 armed silhouettes waited beneath the arena lights. No, he said. I think they are about to stop. The signal changed from red to white. This time, the countdown began. The white signal flashed and 13 champions moved at once. Korvath charged from the center, his plasma axe opening with a violent blue arc. Sarai and Mirai split to either side, while Audrin launched 3 spinning blades toward Ethan's chest. The remaining warriors advanced in a practiced formation, their armor feeding targeting data through the arena's combat network. Above them, the countdown displayed 60. Ethan stepped forward. The first blade passed behind his shoulder. He turned his wrist, struck the second with the flat of his knife, and sent it into the magnetic floor. The third never reached him. He caught Audrin's forearm, changed the angle by less than a hand's width, and guided the weapon directly into Korvath's axe. The collision burst across the arena like miniature thunder. Korvath staggered. Watch where you're swinging, Ethan said. You moved him. The shout came from one of the commentators, though the entire galaxy had seen it. 300,000 spectators leaned forward as Ethan slipped beneath Korvath's next strike. His knife touched a seam under the champion's arm. The powered armor shut down instantly, locking Korvath's limbs in place. The reptilian warrior fell sideways with a roar. 54 seconds. Sarai attacked high while Mirai swept low. Ethan jumped neither over nor away from them. He stepped between the sisters, caught one wrist, redirected the other's staff, and allowed their own momentum to complete the exchange. Sarai spun across Mirai's shoulder. Mirai struck the floor. Sarai landed on top of her. Neither moved. I told you to take the left, Sarai groaned. You were on the left. Your other left. The audience made a confused sound that was almost laughter. Audrin activated all 9 of his molecular blades. They unfolded from his armor in a shining fan, each edge vibrating fast enough to separate metal at the atomic level. The commentators began reciting his victories, But Ethan was already inside the weapon's reach. He struck once beneath Audrin's ribs. Nothing appeared to happen. Audrin laughed. Then all 9 blades disconnected from his armor and dropped harmlessly around his feet. Ethan glanced down. That seems inconvenient. Audrin swung a fist. Ethan turned, used the champion's shoulder as leverage, and sent him rolling into the arena wall. 47 seconds. The remaining 10 stopped advancing. For the first time, silence appeared among them. Then their tactical network reacted. Red targeting lines converged on Ethan from every direction. A horned champion fired a sonic cannon. Another launched a gravity net. 2 armored giants raised particle shields and rushed together, intending to crush him between them. Ethan's eyes moved once across the formation. Princess Lysera saw the change. Until that moment, the human had looked mildly bored. Now every trace of humor disappeared from his face. His attention sharpened with such sudden intensity that the crystal chains on her long ears trembled when she leaned closer. He knew they would do that, she whispered. Lord Taravan did not answer. The sonic blast reached Ethan first. He dropped to one knee as the gravity net passed above him and wrapped around the 2 charging giants. Their combined mass triggered the net's compression field, slamming them together so violently that both shields shattered. The audience gasped. Ethan seized the fallen sonic cannon, rotated it, and fired at the floor. The shockwave launched him upward. He crossed 12 meters before the spectators understood he had left the ground. He landed on the horned champion's shoulders, struck a pressure point behind the jaw, and used the collapsing body as a platform to reach the next opponent. 38 seconds. The arena's tracking cameras began losing him. Holographic displays flickered, struggling to predict his movement. Automated commentators generated warnings instead of analysis. One drone announced, "Combat pattern unavailable," then repeated the sentence in 6 languages, as though translation might improve the situation. Ethan moved through the champions without wasting a step. A wrist was turned until a weapon dropped. A helmet sensor was blinded with a smear of magnetic dust. A knee joint was struck precisely where armor plates overlapped. Each attack ended with an opponent unconscious, immobilized or staring upward in disbelief. No blood covered the floor. No killing blow was delivered. That frightened Caldris more than anything. From the archive chamber, he watched the battle through an emergency feed while fragments of the Terran file scrolled beside it. Adaptive prediction, neural acceleration, controlled lethality. The ancient report described soldiers trained to process enemy movement before conscious thought could respond. But one line remained highlighted in red. Surviving operatives display significant restraint when concealment is required. Caldris looked at the arena. Ethan was not fighting desperately. He was hiding. 21 seconds. Only 4 champions remained standing. They retreated toward one another, finally abandoning pride for survival. Korvath still lay trapped inside his disabled armor, shouting instructions no one wanted to hear. "Attack together!" "We tried that," Mirai muttered from the floor. The last 4 activated emergency enhancements. Their muscles expanded beneath synthetic skin. Armor plates opened to release stimulant mist. One champion, a towering female warrior named Vera, raised a fusion hammer that made the air ripple. Ethan approached them at an ordinary walking pace. The countdown displayed 16. Vera attacked with enough force to fracture the arena floor. Ethan shifted half a step. The hammer missed him and buried itself in a magnetic plate. He placed one boot on its handle. Vera pulled. The weapon did not move. Her eyes widened. Ethan tapped the release mechanism with his knife. The hammer separated into 6 maintenance components. He handed her the smallest piece. "You may want to speak with the manufacturer." She stared at it. Ethan struck her armor's central regulator. The suit powered down, lowering her gently to the floor. 9 seconds. The remaining 3 rushed him in panic. The arena lights flashed. Metal rang once, then twice. The third sound was Ethan's knife sliding back into its sheath. When the countdown reached 0, every champion lay defeated. Ethan stood at the center of the arena, breathing evenly. A thin cut marked one sleeve, but the skin beneath it was untouched. Around him, 13 undefeated warriors remained alive, conscious enough to understand what had happened, and too stunned to speak. The announcer opened his mouth. No sound came out. Ethan looked toward the royal balcony. Princess Lysera was no longer smiling. He raised one hand toward the frozen audience. "Was that the introduction?" he asked. "Or do we begin now?" For several seconds, the celestial arena remained so silent that the faint hum of the gravitic projectors became audible. 300,000 spectators stared at the human standing among 13 fallen champions, while billions more watched through delayed broadcasts across the empire. Ethan lowered his raised hand when no one answered. "I will assume that means yes." The announcer finally remembered how to breathe. His voice emerged as a weak crackle from the amplification system. The contest has concluded." A medical drone descended toward Korvath, scanned his disabled armor, and displayed a cheerful green symbol. Korvath tried to swat it away, but the suit still refused to move. "Stop smiling at me," he growled. The drone enlarged the symbol. Laughter began somewhere in the upper tiers. It spread uncertainly at first, then grew until even some Imperial officers were hiding smiles. Ethan walked toward the exit while emergency teams rushed past him. None of the medics seemed willing to approach too closely. One bowed by accident, straightened in embarrassment, then bowed again, because the first bow had already happened. On the royal balcony, Princess Lysera remained standing. "He defeated them without killing anyone," she said. Lord Teravan's face had lost its color. The rules did not require death. The audience did. He had no answer. Below, Vera sat beside the separated pieces of her fusion hammer, turning the smallest component between her fingers. "The manufacturer?" she called after Ethan. "Probably," Ethan replied without looking back. "Or poor maintenance." She glanced at the Imperial technicians gathering around her weapon. 3 of them immediately began blaming one another. Ethan entered the western corridor where Captain Dresk waited with twice as many guards as before. Their pulse spears were raised, though none pointed directly at him. "Am I under arrest?" Ethan asked. Dresk looked at the weapons, then at the guards. "No." "Good. It would make dessert awkward." The captain slowly lowered his spear. "You knew where every armor joint was. They were visible. Not to us. That sounds like an armor design problem." Dresk's lower mouth twitched again, but the upper remained tense. Before he could speak, the corridor doors opened and Princess Lysera entered without her nobles. Her long ears were held rigid, the crystal chains hanging from them almost motionless. She stopped several steps from Ethan. For the first time since meeting him, she did not look amused. "You lied to me." Ethan considered that. "About which part?" "You said they might be right about you being weak." "They might still be. 13 people is a small sample." Dresk turned away to hide a reaction. Lysera did not. "You humiliated the greatest warriors in the Empire. Your empire placed them in front of me. And you defeated all of them in 1 minute. 51 seconds. Her eyes narrowed. "That does not improve the situation. It improves the timing." She stepped closer. "What are you?" "Human. Do not insult me." "I am trying very hard not to." The corridor lights dimmed as security protocols activated throughout the arena. Heavy doors sealed at both ends. A cold mechanical voice announced that all military personnel were to remain in place pending investigation. Ethan glanced upward. "That sounds friendly." "It means the War Council is afraid," Lysera said. "Of me? Of what you represent?" Deep beneath the palace, Caldris stood before 12 holographic generals. The Terran archive file floated between them, its damaged records casting pale light across their faces. Some dismissed the data as forged. Others demanded Ethan's immediate execution. The oldest general said nothing until the battle replay showed Ethan dismantling Vera's hammer. "Freeze the image," he ordered. The recording stopped with Ethan's knife touching the weapon's release point. The general enlarged the frame. He identified a classified weakness in less than a second. "Luck," another officer said. Caldris opened a second record. It showed an ancient battlefield littered with destroyed war machines and a single line of human soldiers advancing through smoke. That is what 12 civilizations called it before they surrendered. The chamber fell quiet. The oldest general looked toward the sealed arena feed. "Bring the human to us." Back in the corridor, armed palace guards approached in formation. Their commander announced that Ethan was required for questioning. Lysera stepped between them and him. "He is under royal protection." The commander hesitated. "Your Highness, this order comes from the War Council." "Then the War Council may wait." Ethan leaned slightly toward her. "You know that standing in front of the dangerous human makes the protection arrangement confusing. Be quiet. That is usually when people become nervous. I am already nervous." The honesty surprised them both. Lysera turned to face him. "They will ask how you did it." "I practiced." "They will not accept that." "Then I will mention the green paste. It was extremely motivating." Despite herself, she laughed once. The sound vanished when the doors at the far end opened and an elderly figure appeared, escorted by black-armored soldiers. Caldris walked slowly toward Ethan, staring at the faded insignia on his shoulder. When he came within 3 steps, he stopped and spoke in an old human dialect no imperial translator recognized. Ethan's expression changed for the first time. It was not fear, but recognition. Caldris bowed his head. "I thought your program was extinct." Ethan looked past him at the black-armored escort, then toward the surveillance lenses hidden in the ceiling. "That," he said quietly, "was the idea." Ethan was escorted beneath the palace through corridors that did not appear on any public map. The walls shifted around the group as they walked, rearranging themselves with silent magnetic locks, until even Princess Lysera stopped pretending she knew where they were going. Black-armored soldiers surrounded them in 2 precise lines, their visors reflecting Ethan from every angle. He looked at one of them. "Do you always travel in groups of 12? The soldier did not answer. "Good conversation. Very disciplined." Caldris led them through a circular door that opened only after scanning his eye, blood, voice, and apparently his patience. Beyond it waited the Imperial War Council, seated around a ring-shaped table suspended above a holographic map of the known galaxy. 12 generals watched Ethan enter. Several wore ceremonial exoskeletons. One had replaced half his body with polished machinery. Another possessed 3 eyes and used all of them to glare. "Human," the oldest general said. "State your designation." "Ethan Ward." "Your military designation." "Retired." "Your program designation." Ethan glanced at Caldris. "You have already read the file." "The file is incomplete." That was also the idea. The 3-eyed general struck the table. The galaxy map rippled. "You stand before the highest military authority in the Empire." Ethan looked down at the disturbed stars. "Then someone should stabilize the furniture." Lysera turned her face away, but not before one of her long ears twitched with amusement. The general noticed and became even angrier. Caldris activated the ancient archive. Fragments of ruined footage appeared above the table. Human soldiers crossing burning cities, war machines collapsing around them, entire fleets withdrawing from planets no one remembered fighting over. The Terran Adaptive Warfare Program was created during the Silent Expansion, Caldris said. Its soldiers were trained to study alien movement, technology, and strategy faster than ordinary minds could process them. They did not overpower armies. They understood them. "Myths," one general muttered. Ethan studied the images without expression. "Mostly exaggerated." Caldris changed the recording. 32 humans stood against a horizon filled with enemy armor. 9 armies surrendered. "The 10th was late," Ethan said. Every head turned toward him. He sighed. "Supply problems." The mechanical general leaned forward. How many of your kind remain? Humans? Soldiers like you. Enough. The answer passed through the chamber like a draft from an open grave. Several generals exchanged silent signals through their implants. Lysera saw it and stepped closer to Ethan. You brought him here for answers, not threats. Your Highness, the oldest general said, this man represents a weapon hidden inside a species we considered harmless. Ethan looked at him. That attitude explains the arena. And your performance explains our concern. Your concern arrived 51 seconds late. The table emitted a warning tone as the general's pulse rose. Ethan glanced at the display. At least the furniture is honest. Before the argument could continue, the holographic galaxy vanished. Red symbols flooded the chamber. A security voice announced an internal breach in the lower palace. Then the lights failed. Darkness lasted less than a second, but when emergency illumination returned, 2 guards were already falling. Their armor sparked where thin black needles had pierced the joints. A figure dropped from the ceiling, wrapped in adaptive camouflage that bent the red light around its body. Another emerged from the wall itself, passing through the material with phase technology. The council chamber erupted. Generals activated shields. Soldiers fired pulse bursts. The assassins moved through the chaos toward Lysera. Ethan pushed her behind the table just as a blade passed through the space where her throat had been. You could have warned me, she said, landing awkwardly beside him. I was distracted by the furniture. 3 more attackers appeared. Their weapons carried no imperial markings, but they ignored the generals and focused entirely on the princess and Ethan. Caldris understood first. They came for the human. That feels rude, Ethan said. He tore a broken support strut from the table and threw it across the chamber. It struck an invisible shape in midair. The camouflage failed, revealing an assassin spinning toward the floor. Ethan stepped forward, caught the attacker's wrist, and redirected the energy blade into the phase generator of the second intruder. Both devices overloaded. Blue-white light filled the room. The mechanical general stared. You recognized phase technology? It hums. No one can hear that frequency. Then it is fortunate I am no one. The remaining assassins changed tactics. They released a swarm of micro-drones, each smaller than a fingernail and armed with nerve toxins. The black cloud spread toward Lysera. Ethan seized a fallen pulse spear, reversed its power cell, and struck the floor. A magnetic wave burst outward. The drones dropped all at once, covering the chamber like metallic rain. One landed in Lysera's hair. She removed it carefully. Is this the part where you say you practiced? No, this part was luck. She stared at him. You are a terrible liar. I practiced that too. The final assassin reached the council table and raised a compact fusion weapon. Ethan crossed the distance before the trigger completed its scan. One hand locked the attacker's elbow. The other struck beneath the mask. The assassin collapsed without firing. Silence returned, broken only by damaged systems and the gentle crackle of failing shields. Ethan knelt, removed the attacker's helmet, and found an imperial face beneath it. The oldest general looked from the assassin to the sealed chamber doors. Someone inside the palace authorized this. Caldris examined the weapon and went pale. Not merely inside the palace, inside this council. Every general became still. Ethan rose slowly. Lysera watched him scan the room, no longer amused by his calmness. For the first time she understood that the arena had not revealed what he was capable of. It had only announced to the galaxy that he existed. Ethan looked at the 12 generals. Now, he said, we can begin asking useful questions. The council chamber sealed itself around them, locking every door and cutting all external communications. Red emergency light moved slowly across the faces of the 12 generals, while the unconscious assassins lay among fallen weapons and disabled drones. No one spoke for several seconds. Ethan picked up one of the black needles used against the guards and examined the microscopic circuits running along its surface. Imperial manufacture, he said. The mechanical general stiffened. That proves nothing. It proves your enemies shop locally. Lysera crouched beside the fallen assassin whose helmet had been removed. The attacker wore the uniform of a palace security officer beneath the camouflage layer. A silver command implant had been burned into the skin behind his long ear. This authorization mark belongs to the Royal Defense Network, she said. Caldris leaned closer. Only members of the council can activate it. Every general looked at the others. The three-eyed commander reached toward the control panel at his seat. Ethan threw the needle. It struck the panel directly between his fingers. "Do that again," Ethan said, "and I will assume you are ordering dessert." The commander pulled his hand back. "You dare threaten me?" "No, dessert is rarely a threat." Princess Lysera rose. "No one touches the system until we know who compromised it." The oldest general, Marshal Vaeron, activated an isolated projector built into his mechanical wrist. A map of the palace appeared above his palm. Several sections flashed black. The assassins disabled internal surveillance before entering this chamber. Their escape path leads through the royal residence. Lysera's expression changed. "My mother is there." Almost at once the floor shook. A distant explosion traveled through the palace foundations, followed by a warning signal announcing that the royal shield had failed. Ethan was already moving toward the sealed door. Vaeron blocked his path. "The chamber is under lockdown." Ethan glanced at the door. "Then unlock it. Protocol requires confirmation from 3 council members." Ethan looked back at the generals. "Raise your hands if you prefer the Empress alive." 5 hands rose immediately. 2 more followed after an uncomfortable pause. "Democracy," Ethan said. "Messy, but effective." The door opened. Beyond it, smoke filled the corridor. Palace guards fought figures wearing phase cloaks while attack drones poured from ventilation shafts. Ethan took a pulse rifle from a wounded soldier, checked its power level, and handed it back. "Almost empty." "There are 6 shots," the guard protested. "Exactly." Ethan picked up 2 shorter weapons instead and walked into the smoke. Lysera followed. "You are not leaving me behind." That was not a request. Neither was mine. A drone dropped from the ceiling. Ethan fired without looking. The machine struck the wall and exploded behind them. Lysera ducked. "You could warn me before doing that. You would have ducked too early." They moved through the palace as alarms changed from security warnings to evacuation orders. The assassins had altered the gravity fields in the eastern halls, turning entire corridors sideways. Guards clung to door frames while furniture drifted through the air. Ethan stepped onto a wall, adjusted his balance, and continued as though the palace had merely become inconvenient. Lysera followed less gracefully, catching a floating ceremonial vase before it struck her. This was a gift from the Talari ambassador. He has poor taste. It is priceless. That explains it. At the entrance to the royal residence, they found 20 guards unconscious and the shield door cut open. Beyond it, the Empress stood behind an overturned throne while 6 assassins advanced through the chamber. Her personal guards were trapped beneath a collapsed energy barrier. One attacker raised a particle weapon toward her. Ethan fired both pistols. The shot struck the ceiling rather than the assassin. Lysera stared at him. Then the crystal support above the attacker shattered. A suspended light structure crashed down, forcing all 6 assassins apart. Ethan entered before they recovered. The first swung a monoblade. He trapped the weapon between the 2 pistols, twisted, and sent it spinning into the floor. The second activated a kinetic shield. Ethan shot the shield generator from behind after reflecting a pulse bolt off the throne's polished frame. The third tried to phase through him. Ethan stepped aside and kicked the attacker into a damaged gravity field. The assassin rose helplessly toward the ceiling. "That one may require a ladder," Ethan said. The Empress watched in stunned silence as the remaining attackers surrounded him. Their armor opened, releasing combat stimulants and neural accelerators. To Lysera, the scene resembled the arena, except Ethan no longer appeared restrained. He moved before the assassins completed their attacks. Each strike was shorter, faster, and more precise than anything he had shown before. Armor cracked. Weapons failed. Bodies struck the floor in rapid succession. The final attacker attempted to detonate a fusion charge attached to his chest. Ethan seized the device, removed its core, and threw the harmless shell back. "You should read the safety instructions." The assassin looked down in disbelief. Ethan struck him once, and he collapsed. Less than 20 seconds had passed. The chamber became still. The Empress stepped from behind the throne, her gaze fixed on Ethan. "You saved my life. Your furniture helped." Lysera looked around at the ruined residence. "You destroyed half the room. The other half was already damaged." Marshal Vaeron and the council guards arrived moments later. Caldris examined the disabled fusion core while Vaeron stared at the defeated assassins. "You were holding back in the arena." Ethan returned one of the pistols to its stunned owner. "It was a sporting event." "And this?" Vaeron asked. Ethan looked toward the Empress and Lysera. This was not. A wounded assassin suddenly laughed from the floor. Caldris knelt beside him. "Who sent you?" The man's smile widened as a hidden implant projected a symbol into the air. 3 narrow lines crossing a broken circle. Ethan's insignia. Lysera turned toward him. The assassin whispered, "Earth remembers its soldiers." Then the implant burned out, taking him with it. Ethan stared at the fading symbol, and for the first time, genuine concern entered his face. "That," he said quietly, "is impossible." The dead assassin's symbol remained suspended above the ruined throne room until the projection collapsed into pale static. Ethan stared at the broken circle long after everyone else had turned toward him. Marshal Vaeron ordered the chamber sealed, but Ethan barely heard him. For years he had believed the Terran adaptive warfare program had vanished with its final soldiers, scattered quietly across distant worlds, and sworn never to become weapons again. The symbol on the assassin's implant suggested someone had found the buried records and turned them into a threat. Caldris examined the burned device with a portable scanner. "The signal did not come from Earth," he said. "It was routed through the palace archive." Vaeron's mechanical eye brightened. "Then the traitor is here." The council was gathered again, this time without ceremonial weapons, private guards, or confidants. Ethan stood before the 12 generals, while Lysera and the Empress watched from the upper platform. Caldris placed the assassin's implant beside the ancient Terran file and activated both. Matching encryption patterns appeared, but one detail differed. "The assassins copied the symbol," Caldris said. "They did not understand it." Ethan leaned closer. The 3 lines crossing the circle were reversed. "A mirror image," Lysera said. "A forgery," Ethan replied. The 3-eyed general moved suddenly toward the chamber exit. The doors sealed before he reached them. Everyone turned. General Terex slowly raised his hands. "This proves nothing." "It proves you recognize the mistake," Ethan said. Terex's central eye narrowed. "So did you. I wore the real insignia." The general activated a hidden transmitter beneath his sleeve. Vaeron's guards raised their weapons, but Ethan reached him first. He caught Terex's wrist, removed the transmitter, and placed it gently on the table. "You should stop reaching for buttons around me," Ethan said. "It has become predictable." The device projected encrypted orders connecting Terex to the arena officials, palace security, and the assassins. He had arranged the public battle to provoke Ethan into revealing his abilities, then planned to blame the attack on a hidden Terran army. Fear of humanity would have united the Empire under emergency military rule, with Terex controlling the throne through manufactured war. "You humiliated us," Terex snarled at Ethan. "The Empire needed an enemy." "No," the Empress said. "You needed one." Terex lunged for a fallen weapon. Lysera stepped aside as Ethan caught him by the collar and lowered him face first onto the council table. The furniture gave another warning tone. Ethan looked at the display. Still honest. Even Vaeron laughed. Terex was arrested and his network was dismantled before dawn. The arena technicians, palace officers, and corrupted archive keepers who had served him were identified through the transmitter's quantum ledger. Corvath and the other champions, furious that they had been used as pieces in a political performance, publicly testified against him. Vaera brought the 6 pieces of her fusion hammer to the hearing and placed them on the evidence table. "The human says maintenance was poor," she announced. The manufacturer issued an apology within the hour. Days later, Ethan returned to the celestial arena. The floor had been repaired, though one magnetic plate still carried the mark of Vaera's hammer. This time, no weapons waited for him. The stands were filled with citizens, soldiers, and representatives from worlds that had watched humanity's intended humiliation become the Empire's greatest embarrassment. Princess Lysera stood beside him at the center of the arena, her silver hair lifted by the artificial breeze. The crystal chains on her long ears chimed softly as she faced the audience. "We believed quietness was weakness," she said. "We believed kindness meant incapability. We were wrong." She turned toward Ethan. "On behalf of the Empire, I apologize." The arena waited. Ethan looked around at the same crowd that had laughed when he entered carrying a worn knife. Months earlier, he would have answered with silence and disappeared before anyone could ask more questions. Hiding had protected the surviving Terran soldiers, but it had also allowed lies about humanity to grow. "You were arrogant," he said. Lysera's ears lowered slightly. "Your food dispensers are dangerous, your arena safety procedures are questionable, and your announcer speaks for too long." The audience began to laugh. "But," Ethan continued, "you learned." The laughter faded into attentive silence. "So did I." He removed the faded insignia from his shoulder and held it in his palm. "We hid because the galaxy feared what we could do. We forgot that hiding also allowed others to decide what we were." He placed the insignia on the arena floor, not as a rejection, but as the end of secrecy. Across the Empire, the old Terran files were opened under joint supervision. The remaining soldiers were offered protection rather than pursuit. Some refused to return. Others sent brief messages confirming that they were alive. None wanted conquest. Most wanted gardens, repair shops, families, and lives without orders. Corvath and the 12 champions later requested training from Ethan. He accepted on one condition: they would begin without weapons. Corvath objected immediately. "How long will that last?" "Until you stop attacking in a straight line. That could take years." I noticed. Lysera often watched their sessions, laughing whenever the former champions argued over whose defeat had been least embarrassing. Ethan no longer avoided the royal balcony or the people waiting to speak with him. He remained quiet, but his silence was no longer a wall. It had become a choice. When he finally prepared to leave Valora, the Empress offered him rank, wealth, and command of an imperial fleet. Ethan declined all 3. Lysera met him beside his small transport ship. "Where will you go?" "Earth first." "To awaken the warrior program?" "To tell them the secret is over." She studied him. "And after that?" Ethan looked toward the stars beyond the launch field. "Somewhere with better food." Lysera smiled. "That may be the most difficult mission of your career." His ship rose through the clouds as the capital watched without fear. The Empire would remember the minute in which 13 champions fell, but Ethan would remember what came after. The moment enemies chose honesty, a princess chose humility, and a soldier, who had spent his life hiding, finally allowed the galaxy to see him. For the first time in centuries, Earth was no longer a forgotten world, and humanity no longer needed to prove its strength.